Hi everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you today how to do our SuperNest bracelet. And this is really using SuperDuos to highlight an 8mm bead. The other unique thing and cool thing about this bracelet is using the cup button as the closure clasp. We actually make the link identical here, the loop, to having a bead inside of it, but instead of using a clasp closure, we're just going to slide the cup button as the clasp. So it's kind of fun to work with, to have a nice consistent look to the bracelet, and has a pretty loop here at the end to put your cup button into. For this bracelet, again, it's the SuperDuos, and it's highlighting some 8mm round beads. In the example here, I've used the Jade Picasso SuperDuos, and then I've used the glass pearls in an 8mm to kind of highlight the pearl cup button here, that shimmer cup button color. The SuperDuos, in addition to that color really being a standout color, we use two colors of 11-Os. The 11-O color that's closer to the pearl is going to be your more standout color. The other one's on the outside. I use the galvanized pewter as my 6-O bead here. And then for my 11s that I was talking about, I use the Duracoat galvanized matte gold as my inside, and the mauve-lined light topaz luster on the outside. And then all you need is your cup button, and that kind of gets you going. In addition to your materials as far as bead-wise, you're going to use some wildfire beading thread. I'm using 0.006, and I'm going to be using a white color with the color that I'm working on now. I have some super new glue. I have my thread zap and size 10 English beading needles. I'm going to use 2 of these. Bead-wise for the example that I'm going to make for you, I have the Crystal Capri Gold cup button that has a nice coppery kind of golden look to it. I'm using the white pastel amber SuperDuos. I have my 2 colors of my 11-O seed beads. I'm using the matte metallic patinaed iris color, which is a green matted color. And then I have the silver lined dark topaz AB. My 6-O bead is going to be root beer lined light topaz. And then I'm really going to highlight some faceted 8mm round amethyst beads in the middle there. And I'm going to be just using these materials here to do this whole bracelet. Again, the cup button is going to focus and function as my clasp, and it's going to be part of the loop and look like a continuous bracelet. So we're going to get ready to get this started, making little piles of all of our beads. So as I'm getting ready to start this bracelet, the material-wise, you're only going to need 1 tube of each of your seed beads. You're really not going to use more than a tube. The one that you use the most of, tube quantity-wise and gram weight-wise, is going to be your SuperDuo. For your 8mm bead that you're working with, you're going to use probably 7 to 8 beads depending on your wrist size. I've used 7 on my bracelet here, and you can use 8 need be. I have 8, actually I have 9 beads sitting here, but I'll use 8 on this bracelet just to show the bigger length that you can do. We are actually going to start with our cup button because we're going to start here at the bottom at the base. The cup buttons have that dome shape, and the nice thing with the cup buttons is you can drop in a SuperDuo and it gives it a nice little color variance to your bead that you're working on and decorates it a little bit. So to start, I have 5 feet of beading thread, and I've put a needle on each end of that beading thread. I'm going to start by going into my cup button by putting on a SuperDuo. And the SuperDuos have 2 holes. I'm putting 1 needle through one hole, 1 through the other. With the cup button facing up, so it's a dome shape like a bowl would be upside down, I'm going to put a needle through each side of the cup button. And I'm going to let that drop down next to that SuperDuo bead. So it's just hanging out inside of there. If you want to also, you could put 3 11-O beads in the center of the cup button. That works as well. Before I get started into my bracelet, what I want to do is actually create a little bit of an anchor for you to get the cup button in place. So I'm going to add some seed beads here. On each side of my needle, so on my right needle, I'm going to add 2 11-O seed beads, and on my left needle, I'm going to add 2 11-O seed beads. I'm going to let those beads drop down next to my cup button and just hang out there for a second. This next pattern that we do with our 6-Os is going to be creating a cross section, or almost a right angle weave look, with the 6-O seed beads. This is going to repeat the whole way through the bracelet. I'm going to pick up my first 6-O bead, and my first needle is going to go from right to left through the 6-O. My second needle is going to go from left to right, crossing through that 6/0 bead so that I have a thread going through either direction and a needle coming out either side. I'm going to pull nice and tight, and then I'm going to have those 2 needles on either side, which have actually switched place. Onto my right needle and onto my left needle, I stick another 6/0 bead. I'm going to pick up my 4th 6/0 bead and repeat the steps that I did with the first, needle going through right to left, and the other needle going through left to right. At this point here, I want to hold my needles at the end, and I want to make sure that I have my thread still even. Sometimes when you're putting on the cup button at first, it can kind of move around. So my threads are even at this point, and I'm ready to proceed on. So as I'm working here, we've created this X pattern. Right there, that little cross. We're going to be working with the inside first, and then we'll come back and add to the outside. To work on the inside, we're going to be adding 11 O's of one color in our SuperDuos and our 8 O's. So I've chosen to use my matte green as my inside color for my 11 O's. So what that's going to mean is that my first step here is always going to be adding 2 11 O's. Then I'm going to add 2 SuperDuos, and then 1 11-0. And I'm going to let that drop down next to the start. I'm going to do the same thing on the left needle. Anytime you're working with 2 needles, generally speaking, it's almost a mirrored effect, that whatever you do on the right needle, you're also going to do on the left. I'm going to go in now and actually add my 8mm bead. Just like I've done with the top and bottom of that cross of the 6/0 bead, I'm going to repeat that step with the 8mm bead. 1 needle going from left to right and 1 going from right to left. And give a nice tight pull, and that's going to drop that bead right in there and almost make those SuperDuos look like they're fanning out. As I continue here, I'm going to do the opposite that I've done. So I'm going to put on 1 of my 11 O's, 2 SuperDuos, and 2 11 O's. And that's going to be the same for the right and also for the left needle. Once I have those on, I'm going to repeat that cross section just like I did with the 6/0 beads, bringing those together by taking my first 6/0 in this set, going right to left, left to right, and giving a nice tight pull. After each bead is added, you want to make sure to give a nice tight pull to that cross section to really bring those beads down in place. I'm going to pick up my needles then, and on my right needle, just like I've done before, 1 bead of my 6/0s go on the right, 1 on the left, and then the 4th bead to create that cross is going to get crisscrossed through. 1 needle going left to right, the other going right to left. Give a nice tight pull. And then you have your project design. So you can start to see it taking shape now. And you're just going to continue the whole way, adding your 2 11 O's, 2 SuperDuos, 1 11-0 on each needle, crossing through my 8mm bead here, and then repeating the steps above the 8mm bead. After you repeat those steps above the 8mm bead, we're going to go in here and do the cross section again. So I repeat this, the opposite, going 1 seed bead, 2 SuperDuos, 2 seed beads, and then do my cross section. You're going to do this the whole length of your wrist until you get to the point that we're going to create an open hole in order to clasp our cup button into it. So I'm going to continue on, and again I'm going to add about 8 of my 8/0 beads. That's going to give you about a 7¼ inch bracelet. So I'm just showing you here as I'm continuing with the bracelet. I have my 5th bead in place, and again I'm going to keep going until I have 8 beads on, and then we're going to create that open loop in order for our cup button to fit through at the very end. So I'm just showing you here as I'm continuing with the bracelet. I have my 5th bead in place, and again I'm going to keep going till I have 8 beads on, and then we're going to create that open loop in order for our cup button to fit through at the very end. So I have my 8mm beads here in place, and I'm going to get ready to add my last loop. The last loop is going to be very similar to what we've been doing that cross section, but without adding the 8/0 in the middle, or 8mm in the middle, sorry. So when we're doing this here, the pattern is going to be almost identical. What we're going to be doing is adding 2 11/0s on my right needle, and then 2 SuperDuos, and then 1 seed bead. Instead of crossing through an 8mm bead at this point, I'm going to go right back to 2 SuperDuos and 2 11/0 beads. So it's 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. I'm going to let that just hang out there for a second. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. 2 11/0s, 2 SuperDuos, 1 11/0, 2 SuperDuos, 2 11/0s. So I did that on the left and right side. I'm going to get ready to do my cross section here with my 6/0 beads. I'm going to take 1 6/0 bead through right to left, left to right, give a nice tight pull, and that creates my open loop there for my cup button. On the right needle then, I'm going to put my 1 6/0 bead. On the left needle, I put my 6/0 bead, and then I cross through the 4th 6/0, just like I was doing. When I get ready now to go back the bracelet, what this is going to do is pick up the second hole of the SuperDuo that we have here. On either side of my 6/0 bead, I'm going to switch to my silver lined color right here, that silver lined topaz, dark topaz. I'm going to put 2 11/0s on my right needle and 2 11/0s on my left needle. I'm then going to come back the bracelet, going down. My left needle goes through the 6/0 on the left, my right needle goes through the 6/0 on the right side. I'm going to give a nice tight pull. On each side now, I'm going to get ready to go down the sides, adding in 11/0 seed beads. At this time I'm going to be adding in 11/0s and just a couple of my 6/0s. The 6/0s are going to sit on the sides of the gemstones there, and the 11/0s are going to fill in between every other little place. So I'm going to start with my right needle, putting on one of my 11/0s, and then I'm going to sew through the open hole of the first SuperDuo in line. Another 11/0, sew through the second hole of the next SuperDuo. When I'm in between my sets here, I'm going to be picking up a 6/0 bead and sewing that between. 11/0 goes on, and I pick up my SuperDuo. Another 11/0 goes on, and I sew through my 6/0. When I'm coming down again, pick up a 6/0. And when I'm going through again, I'm going to pick up an 11/0 after my 6, sew through a SuperDuo. 11/0 goes on, sew through a SuperDuo. When I'm on the side of my gemstone, 6/0 goes on, sew through the next SuperDuo. So all I'm doing really is adding some seed beads and sewing through on each side. This will pull the bracelet in a tiny bit and kind of make it, the gemstones sit up a little bit. So you can see I'm going down the right side here. What I'll do is I'll go down the right side through this second bead, and then I'll switch over and do the left for a little bit. It's easiest to work with one needle at a time. And again, this 6/0 goes on as I go and pick up a gemstone. So I'm going to stop with the right side here, and I'm going to pick up and go to my left side. And then I'll continue on with my design. I flipped the left side just over to the right, and that way I can show you here as we work. Again, because I work better with my right needle than left, so I tend to always flip things around and work from the right side. But it's always going to be the 11/0s going on, and then that 6/0 going on the side. And we're just continuing down from left to right, and this will give you a good view then as I do this other side of what the bracelet actually will look like as you add your 11 O's. Again, this is the fast part. It's actually quite a quick bracelet to do. I'm sitting here and this whole bracelet's probably going to take me about 30 minutes or so. So I didn't do much off screen from the video here. And I'm just continuing to go down, adding the 11 O's. And you can see how it's decorating this side up on the 11 O's. Adding that seed bead on the side makes the 8mm bead just kind of pop up. I'm going to continue doing that the whole length of my bracelet. So I've gone ahead and I've added all 8 of my gemstones here. And when I'm coming back, I've done the sides, I'm sorry, to all of my 8 here. And when I'm coming out to the very end, I'm going to have my needle and thread coming out the last 2 6/0 beads as I'm working. To reinforce the clasp here, which is what I want to do, I'm going to sew through the 6/0 bead with one of the needles. The left needle I'm just going to sit out to the side here, and this right needle I'm going to sew through that 6/0 bead, up the 11 O's, through the cut button, as well as the SuperDuo, back down the cut button, back down the 11 O's, and through the 6/0. So it's just going to be a rotation loop there, going through the 6, up through the seed beads, through the SuperDuo, and back down. When my needles get to the same side then, all I'm going to do is tie a knot, do a little bit of a thread burner, and possibly a little bit of glue if you want to do that. And that's going to finish up our bracelet. Once I'm done with the bracelet and I've kind of burnt down those edges there and glued, I'm going to put my project on. And whether or not you do the project with 6 or 7 beads or 8 beads, you can see the length difference here. It's kind of up to you. How big or how long you need it to be. You can also play around with which beads you use in the middle. If you get a chance to make this nest bracelet, we'd love you to use some of our cut buttons. They make a great addition kind of to the end and have that whole end look nice and finished and polished when you're working with it. If you do need any supplies, you can always go to PotomacBeads.com and check out our locations page. If you can't get to one of our shops, we'd be happy to ship to you and give you all the great materials that you need to make any of our YouTube videos. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel too, you can also watch our videos and follow along there and on Facebook for updates on different products as well as new design ideas and new project ideas. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you get a chance, enjoy making this SuperNest bracelet.